us this morning and start with this whole idea of why bother with a vision. Some people would say, why do you even need a vision? What's the point of a vision? Proverbs 29:18 says what? Where there is no vision, the people perish. That's right, that's the King James Version. Where there is no vision, the people perish. Now, when Solomon penned that, he wasn't writing about vision statements. Just to be clear, he didn't have corporate structure in mind. Everybody needs a vision statement. And some of us have worked in the corporate world, the secular world, to the point where things like visions and vision statements and core values and all that stuff aren't really compelling. They don't move us very much. Why? Because usually somebody will tell us what our vision is, right? And if you get a new CEO, you get a new vision. And you better know your vision, and you better know your core values. So what we tried to do a while ago was sort of know our body and discern where we thought the Lord was leading us in crafting this vision. Therefore, it can't say 100% that it's authoritative of God, but I can say this: it was prayerfully conceived, and it stands up to the scrutiny of the Scripture. So why do we have a vision? Because if we translate that Proverbs 29 verse properly, it actually says, where there is no vision, that is, where there is no word of prophecy, where there is no divine oracle, where there is no word of God, where God is not leading and directing, the people are unrestrained. It comes from a word that literally means to be loosened. It goes back to the time of Judges. You might recall we did a little series on Judges a while ago. And one of the condemnations of the people is that everyone did what was right in their own eyes. Where there is no vision, where God's word isn't being put out there, where there is no divine revelation, people just go ahead and do whatever they think they want to do, and they do the best they can. So one of the values of vision is to help us to focus in on what we're doing together, what we think the Lord is doing in us together. So our vision is first to be a praying church. And I think some of you would say, well, that's silly. Isn't everybody a praying church? No. And by a praying church, we don't mean that we say a prayer once in a while or that we open or close in prayer. But here's what this is about. This is about becoming, and it's always a work in progress, a people whose lives are saturated in prayer, the kind that Paul talks about, prayer without ceasing, where prayer is that thing which is in the beginning of our decisions, and in the middle of our decisions, and at the end of our decisions. Not that little add-on that we tend, that's the human tendency, isn't it? To come up with great plans and then ask God to bless them. That's the sprinkle of holy dust on our great plans. Instead, we're talking about being a praying people who bathe themselves in prayer from top to bottom in a way to say, Lord, we don't want to move if you're not moving us in this direction. We don't want to go where you aren't. We don't want to take for granted that we know everything that we should know. We need to come to you and be a praying people. And so that's kind of what we mean by being a praying people. Having more people for whom prayer is central to their lives. Modeling that and giving opportunities for that. And we do that. We do that in small groups, and we do that in Sunday school, and we do that with Wednesday evening prayer meeting, and we do that in worship. But we could do more of it, I think. And we're going to keep pushing along those lines. And just in case you're interested, starting in May, you can sign up if you want. There's a sign up out on the bulletin board out there. For a 31-day course, I use that term roughly because that's the term Andrew Murray uses, on intercessory prayer, which is going to amount to this: a daily devotional coming your way via email that I will send to you every day. That will give you one aspect of intercessory prayer that you can think about, pray over, and develop your prayer life. So, in the next few weeks, if you want that devotional, sign up. All right. To be a praying, next thing on our vision is to be a growing church. We want to be a growing church. I say that with great confidence as a pastor. I want us to be a growing church. The reality is, not everybody wants a church to grow. And there's a nice article written by a guy named Joe McKeever called 10 Reasons Churches Tend to Stay Small. And if you're interested in this article, I copied like 40 of them and put them downstairs. During Coffee Fellowship, you could pick one up. I am not going to go through this article point for point, but he makes some good points. And the first reason that churches stay small, he says, is because they want to. It's because they don't want to grow, because they like things the way they are. And I have lived this. I have pastored a church that didn't want to grow past a certain point, because it disrupted everything. And when a church gets used to being a church and running a certain way, it's very intimidating to think about how it might change. And so they really purpose to keep the church small. And there are lots of things you can do to keep a church small. I hope we're not going to be one of those churches that says we like it the way that we like it, and we're not going to invite people in. So I'd ask you to pray about that and think about that. And are you on board with the idea that we could be a growing church? I do want to talk about the fourth point. So the first point is wanting to stay small. The second point is a quick turnover of pastors. I hope that doesn't happen anytime soon. The third point is domination by a few strong members who are self-appointed to control the affairs of the church. And I'm sure some of you live that too. The fourth point is an important one I want to touch on just for a second. It says not trusting the leaders. And it's really important if a church is going to grow that it has leadership that is qualified, but also that is trustworthy. And leaders have to be trusted to lead. It's a funny thing in churches. Sometimes we appoint people, we give them responsibility, and then no authority. Yes, you're in charge of that, but don't do anything we don't like. Yes, you can have charge of that, but don't spend more than X, Y, Z. And it's just a funny, ingrained sort of church behavior. But ultimately, our leaders have to be empowered to lead, and they have to be trusted to lead. That means they have to be qualified, and that's why you may notice as we preach through the book of Titus, I'm talking about eldership. And I really believe that bringing the biblical concept of eldership to our church is going to help us with a proper structure. It's going to allow certain people to direct the affairs of the church, which is how God has established it, so that others can use their gifts building up the body. And so we'll talk more about that. Maybe we'll talk more about that today at our roundtable discussion if you're able to make it at 11 o'clock. And if you can't make today's, don't worry, there'll be several more. But leaders have to be trusted, which means leaders have to be trustworthy. The determined to stay small church is far more concerned, he writes, about the dollars and cents in the offering plate than about the lost souls in the community. This church would never step out in faith, do something bold to reach the lost and unchurched, and if they did, unless their mindset changed, they would harass their leaders into the grave, demanding an accounting of every dime spent. Instead, small churches should elect good leaders and, within reason, as mentioned earlier, trust these leaders to do their work. Fifth point, he says, inferiority complex. Churches don't believe that they can grow. 6, no plan. The church with no plan, that is, no specific direction for what they're trying to do and become, will content itself with plodding along, going through the motions of all churches everywhere. They have Sunday school and worship services and a few committees. Once in a while, they'll schedule a fellowship dinner or a revival. But ask the leadership, what's your vision for this church, and you'll receive blank stares. So this is why we're talking a little bit about vision, so that you know we do have a thought, a random thought once in a while amongst the leadership of our church. We want to grow. Something for every church to consider when it comes to growth is that we need the right number of leaders in terms of paid staff. This is stuff that you guys don't ever think about probably, and you don't have to think about. This is the stuff I read, so you don't have to. But this is the scoop. A church will have about one full-time pastor or leader for every 120 to 150 people, and a church will not grow past that without additional full-time leaders. And that's because one person can only sustain a congregation of a certain size. And here's what happens, is the worst thing that happens between, say, the 150 and the 200 mark, which is where we are. You can't be pastor to everybody. No one person can do it. And what happens then is you end up disappointing people, because everybody looks at the pastor as, well, I called him and he didn't go here, or I asked him and he didn't do that. And forget that there are 150 plus others who may be making very similar demands, And no matter how hard a pastor works, there's still only 24 hours in a day, and you can only get so much done. And it really knocks the snot out of golf and fishing and other fun pursuits. And so something to think about that the experts say, and this is not intuitive, is that you should hire another staff person in anticipation of growth, to sustain growth, as opposed to waiting for growth to happen and then hire the staff. And that's what a lot of churches do. Well, when we get to a certain point, we'll add staff. The experts are saying you need to add staff if you want to get to a certain point. We need to talk about that because we're right at that mark. You combine our worship, like if everybody came, and we'd be close to the 150 mark. And there's a well-known ceiling in church attendance barriers. That would be the 200 mark, which I believe in rural congregations is probably closer to the 150 mark. I would like to see this church grow. I honestly don't understand why, with a little bit of effort, intentionality on our part, in an area that is reportedly 80% unchurched, in a town of our size, I do not understand why we wouldn't, if we wanted to, have a worshiping community of 300 people. I don't think that's a crazy number. What do you think about that? I don't think it's unreasonable. And I'm not, you guys know me well enough, I suppose I should say this, and another time I do this, I won't even say this. I'm not after arbitrary numbers and growth and all that foolishness. I'm talking about people getting saved. I'm talking about a church effectively reaching into hell and pulling people out. That's what I'm talking about. That's what motivates me. That's what moves me. And I know right away some people would look around and they'd go, 300 people, where would we put them? I don't know. Let's just bring them in and see what happens. We have two services. We have room. We rotate in and out. Sometimes our ships that pass in the night, and that's not a bad thing. We have the space to do this. The question is, do we have a desire to do it? Do we have the drive to do it? Is it something we want to do? Rob, can you turn off that monitor amp? That's the thing that's going click, click, click. Thank you. Seventh reason churches stay small is bad monitors. No, that's not right. Bad health. An unhealthy church isn't going to grow, and we wouldn't want it to, would we? I wouldn't invite somebody to an unhealthy church, and I've been part of certain church environments where I wouldn't feel comfortable inviting somebody, and I pray that we don't get to that point, and we would never get to that point. Eighth reason they stay small, lousy fellowship. It's true, people want to join a fellowship. They don't just want to come to church for an hour. They want to join a group, a community that's doing something. Ninth reason, a state of neglect permeates the church. 10th reason, no prayer. This article is available for you if you want. I want to see the church grow. I think that we could get to 300. If that's something that you could think about and pray about, I would very much appreciate it. One other thought about growth before we move on, which also might seem counterintuitive, is the issue of focus. What are we focusing on? What are we doing? There's another article I copied for you, I'd like to read. It's called Excellent at a Few Things and Other Laws of Leadership. It's downstairs when we go to Coffee Fellowship. Gary McIntosh, Charles Arnn write about the laser focus rule, which says do a few things well. And this is what they say. The alive, growing churches are doing less, while the plateaued and declining churches are trying to do everything. The big difference is that the churches doing less are committed to doing it exceptionally well. The churches doing more find they can't do it all and end up not doing any of it very well. It is a difference between a narrow focus with excellence and a wide focus with mediocrity. Now, I've been preaching this for about 5 years, probably with, I don't know how, I will safe to say mixed results. It's really hard to let things go. It is. And for some reason, I think people fear the loss of those things or fear change. And so sometimes we hang on to stuff we know we shouldn't. There are probably other things going on. I think we wrap ourselves up, our identity up in being busy, as if that is of value. But I can assure you that being busy without results is not particularly valuable to the kingdom, nor to you. So we have to look at those sorts of dynamics always as a church and just keep looking at them. How are we doing when we consider, are there some things we should stop doing so that there are some things that we can do better? Are there some things that we should stop doing so that there are some things we could do with excellence? We know this principle in agriculture. Now, I'm no farmer or anything like that, but we all know that every once in a while you have to prune an apple tree because of the dead wood. And if you don't cut off those dead branches, they continue to suck the life out of the tree, but they'd never produce what? Any fruit. So you know that we have to lop off some of these things from time to time. And that's really the principle that is being said here. A growing church is going to do a few things with excellence. It's going to be known more for those few things than it is for doing everything with mediocrity. So please consider that and pray about it, and maybe we'll talk about that also this afternoon. I will tell you this, our ministry leaders met a couple months ago now, I think. We started to talk about growth a little bit and said, how are we doing as ministry leaders in the area of growth? And realized, well, you know what? We're so busy. We are honestly so busy running our areas of ministry that we don't have time to focus on growth in any way. We don't work together on growth. We don't have a common growth goal. What are we trying to do? Run the thing. Keep the church moving. And it's important that we keep the church moving. However, I've encouraged them to look at their schedules and look at how they're spending their time and look at what they need to do so that maybe we can build in, say, 20% of our time to focus and dream and pray about growth and where God would take us versus feeling spent every month or every Sunday, if you happen to be working here in children's ministry or something, just getting it done, and getting it done. So even your leaders are wrestling with this issue. In case you care to pray for them, that would be much appreciated. All right. We are to be a pray. Now you say, holy cow, at this rate, we will be here till like 6 o'clock tonight. No. Praying, growing church that glorifies God. Let me be brief on a few of these points and then come back to one I want to focus on, and that will be it. Glorifies God. We are not here for ourselves. We are not here to fulfill personal agendas. We are not here to worship people. We are not here for personalities. We are here for Jesus Christ. We are here to preach Him and to preach Him crucified. We are to expand His kingdom, want His kingdom to come. We are here to glorify God, to shine the light on Him, and to get away from the cult of personality and all those things that would cause a church to falter. So that's a simple one. That's kind of a no-brainer, glorifying God, that actively meets. We put the word actively in our vision statement for a reason. We don't want to be passive. We want to be out there. Why is that? Because we are what? A sent people. Jesus sends us. We are sent. We are to go. We are to be active. We are to look for things to do. We are to look for needs to be met. We are to be there on the front, not the back. People will say, well, I would do that if I knew about it, or I would help if somebody made the need known. And of course we want people to be able to speak up, but at the same time, we need to be out and about. We need to be moving. We need to be asking, how can we help? This is how Jesus would do it, I'm sure. So actively is an important part of our mission, meeting the spiritual needs. Spiritual needs. That's the job first. Physical needs are important. Scripture says that. But I think that we failed if we're not drawing lines between the physical help we give and the spiritual reasons that we do it. If we don't do that as a church, then we are just another social service agency. And there's lots of them. And they don't need us. And people don't see us as distinct because we're just one more in a line of handouts. So we've got to find a way to connect the dots between the physical help that we give, and we do quite a bit of that, and the spiritual reasons that we do it, because our real job is to meet spiritual needs through Jesus Christ. That is our job. So we want to meet the spiritual needs, and that's why that's in there first, and physical needs. We don't want to turn a blind eye or a deaf ear to the struggles that people are having. And we don't. If you don't know it, We have a lot of ways that we help people physically. Our Deacons Benevolence Fund is just one. We have a lot of local mission projects that we do. A lot of them fly under the radar, which is really kind of the way that we want it. We'd like you to know that we're doing things, but we don't want to brag about it. It goes back to glorifying God and giving Him the whole glory. We want to take care of the spiritual and physical needs of our members. We talked about this in the Why Church series. Do good, especially to the household of faith. So we start with our members. And then it expands out to the people, our church members, the people of Ellsworth, Hancock County, and beyond. So we want to cast a pretty wide net in terms of meeting the physical and spiritual needs. And that's the last thing I want to talk to you about. I want to talk just a little bit about this idea of and beyond. Who's beyond? Is there something besides Hancock County? Yes, there is. A world out there, my goodness, it's big. And I was blessed this last winter to go down to the Dominican. I've talked with a lot of you about this. And I had that privilege of going on that mission trip to La Romana. I want to tell you a little bit about what I saw there. I saw great mission work going on first, I'll tell you that. The hospital is awesome. The medical mission team's awesome. Necessary work, God-honoring work. I saw amazing worship. We went to worship twice, and it was just fantastic, and I didn't understand a word, and it wasn't necessary. You can just worship the Lord with those people, and it's so neat to sit there and listen to them and know that God understands everything that's going on. It makes you feel kind of probably in perspective the way you ought, like not much. Like, Lord, this is amazing and awesome. So the worship down there was fantastic. The country down there is beautiful, depending on what you're looking at, and I'll get into that in a second. The Caribbean is just like you see on TV, bright blue, clear as a bell. You're in the water up to your neck looking at your toes. It's pretty cool. Didn't see any sharks or barracudas, and I was really thankful for that. Lots of sugar cane. Lots of great stuff. Those were the good things. But what I saw more than anything was need. Everywhere I looked, I saw need. Great need. Need the likes of which you and I probably can't fathom unless you've been there or perhaps have lived in it, but most of us won't get this. The poverty there is indescribable, so I'm not going to spend a lot of time trying to describe it. I'll tell you this, the place is filthy dirty. Like filthy, ew, dirty. Like filthy, I'm coming home, I haven't seen my wife for a week, don't touch me, don't hug me, don't kiss me until I get to take a shower. Dirty. That's how dirty it is. If you are a germaphobe, go, but bring lots of sanitizer. It's everywhere. It's the only place I've ever been where you get out of the shower and put hand sanitizer on. Okay? I could not wait to get to a hotel room in the United States and sing in the shower. I don't sing in the shower, but you can't sing in the shower in the Dominican because little diseases will get in your body. And you don't want them. So, really, I thought the restrooms at JFK were a little suspect until I went to the DR. I would sleep in the restrooms at JFK right now. I would eat in the restrooms at JFK after what I've seen. Okay, so the living conditions are really something. Lots of corrugated metal. You see why if a hurricane goes through there, people are going to die. That stuff isn't held down by much. It's just going to blow all over the place. Sewer does run in the streets. A lot of people barefooted. A lot of people not clothed properly. A lot of stray dogs running around trying to eat the garbage and eating the garbage in the street. And if they're wounded, they're just wounded. They don't pay attention to them. Mangy, you can't even pet them. Do not touch the animals. I don't think they want you really to touch the children, but how are you going to say no to that? Nobody's going to say no. Give me the disease. Give me the kid. And that's what it boils down to. A lot of people take the little ones in their arms. They're so adorable. So cute. And so needy with their little runny noses out there in the betes. I saw poverty of the likes I'd never seen. I saw horrible living conditions. I saw dirty water. I saw disease. I watched people walk every day to that hospital that I was there and just line up to get in. And they walk to the hospital, guys. Most of them have to. They don't have a lot of transportation. But this place is full, and it's overflowing. And I was so humbled by the fact that they sit quietly and wait their turn. They don't complain like they would here in America. Would be screaming at the girl at the front desk. How come my appointment's at 2? How come it's 2:30? Down there, it's much just sit and wait. And the overflow fills and out into the outside. Little babies holding onto their tummies and mothers trying to comfort them. So I saw inadequate health care for sure. There's work to be done down there on that. Crime, holy cow, I wouldn't even go out of the place, honestly. If we weren't with a group, I wasn't going anywhere. There's bars on stuff, like lock you in, lock you out, and you feel good about that. Ask Beth. She said people shooting when she went down there. And I did see a lot of guns, lots of guys with guns who sort of set up arbitrary tolls. That was bizarre. Military uniforms, but you wonder if they're really in the military or if that's how they make their living. So there was a lot of crime. Unemployment is huge. You see people just lazing around all day because they don't have anything else to do. A lot of people will go to work in the fields, but a lot of them don't work at all. And the kids, and I don't think they were on February vacation when we were down there. I just think a lot of them don't go to school. Some of them do, of course, but not all of them. There's a lot of them that are just on the streets anyway. It's something you probably ought to go take a look at if you feel the Lord leading you in that direction, because it's an amazing need. One of the things that happened to us down there was around Thursday. I think it probably happens every trip. I can't imagine that it doesn't. You start to get overwhelmed by the need. You drive by it, you're in it, you're working in it, you see it every day. About Thursday, and you're starting to head home in your mind, all of a sudden the reality of this immense need just seems to weigh on everybody. And I heard people complaining a little bit, boy, we can't do this and we can't do that. And then you start to focus on the things that you cannot do instead of the things that you were doing or that you were there to do. And I put on my pastor hat there and tried to pull people up and say, you know, Jesus is going to bless anybody who gives as much as a cold drink of water in his name. So don't be discouraged by what you can't do or this great need. Do what you can do. And that's what we were doing. But listen, truly, there's a lot to be done. There is a lot to be done. And so I saw primarily need. But I also saw what excites me and gives me a little more hope. I saw opportunity. I feel that our church, if it wants to, another thing to talk about, if we were to focus our efforts for a while on the Dominican Republic, I'm telling you, we could make a major, major difference in the lives of many, many, many people. Many people. Much more than you or I could even begin to fathom, I actually think. Our money goes a long way down there. You can pay a pastor to run a church in a church plant $2,400 a year. Don't get any ideas. He adds quickly. $2,400 a year, you can take money off the plate of a pastor who's trying to plant a church in the barrio and let him minister. There are opportunities for literacy. There are so many poor and illiterate down there that they're easily taken advantage of. There's opportunities for scholarshiping students, which we've done. There are more opportunities for mission work, which I'm sure we'll explore. I have some ideas about an apprenticeship program that I'd love to see put into place that would involve, if we can pull it off, bringing some young men and women from the Dominican here to help them so that we can send them back and they can be, well, even if they just learned English, guys, they're automatically more marketable. Just knowing our language brings up their opportunity to gain better employment and take better care of their families. So we don't have to teach them a ton, even if we can just immerse them in the language. So anyway, I want to talk with you about that. I'm not going to take any more time than this. These are the thoughts I had. I have to write this stuff down. A couple of things. One, I had to write them down because I still have a lot of thoughts. And it's not fair to just blip them out on you. Two is I wanted to be careful to wait at least until now to even talk with a larger group about it, because everybody that comes home from a mission trip is going to be on some kind of mission high, and think, oh, we can change the world. And then by July, they're like, no, I don't think I'll ever go. So I want to make sure to sift out the emotion and make sure it's not that. I don't think it's that. I know it's not that. Here's what I wrote down. And this is a work in progress. But God has blessed our church that it might bless others. Might He be calling us to do what others are unwilling or unable to do. God is glorified when our church literally helps the poor. God is glorified when our church seeks justice. I don't know why I'm emotional. God is glorified when our church seeks justice and liberation for the oppressed. God is glorified when our church experiences unity. Oh, here's a piece that's not emotional. Our church would benefit from a simpler approach to missions. A mission work a majority of us can be passionate about. Mission work that makes an observable impact. Mission work that is hands-on. People will give and they will sacrifice for missions they believe in. People are looking for ways to make the world a better place. The Dominican poor will benefit from a working hospital, from learning English, from learning vocational skills, trades, from literacy, having their own church. We could go down and build a church if we wanted to. They will benefit from pastors and church leaders who are well trained. They will benefit from pastors who don't need to worry about money. They will benefit from a sister church who loves them and will help them. I'd like us to increase our help in the Dominican if you think it's a good idea. I'd like us to make sure that we continue the regular participation in La Romana and the San Pedro mission trips, but I'd like more people to go if they feel led to go. And I'd like our church to make sure that we pay for at least one new person to go down there and experience that every year. And if we did that over a series of years, we'd have a lot of people here who really understand it. Because I've listened for years after year to the presentations, and that was actually helpful. So I didn't have to go through culture shock. I knew what to expect, and I had Dave to explain everything all the way, too. What's that? Why are we doing that? Don't eat that. That was helpful. But if you feel led to go, which was my fortunate experience this year, I would encourage people to go and do that. I'd like our church to pay for that. Assisting with the Maranatha church plants in the barrios, funding that pastor, getting to know a new pastor, helping to build a church, furnish a church, developing relationships with people on the ground down there, funding the tuition of a Dominican student who will stay there and make life better for people down there, funding the literacy initiative of the Maranatha Mission. I can see our Sunday school kids working on that. There are 2 new missionaries to the Dominican that won't be on the ground until 2016. But I'd love for us to strike up a relationship with them and see how that might work with what I'm talking about. Develop that Dominican apprenticeship program. I've been invited to go down to lead some pastor training, which I may do in the near future. Well, not near future, sometime this year. We've talked about adopting a bate. I don't even know if that can be done. How do you adopt a bate? I don't know. But if you want to, it would probably be really neat. Or maybe even just taking what we already do, like our own Operation Shoebox, and make it a Bate's Christmas. When we did the Piperzine, I went out with a medical mission one day. Dave was doing the Piperzine stuff, which is things that people have to drink to get the worms out of their stomach. Little ones drink it, and adults drink it. And it's quite fun to actually do that because but you know what? Some of them don't even know how old they are. Birthday doesn't mean much to some of them. And so we had an interpreter who always had to tell us how old the kids were. Manny, and he was a riot. And he would just laugh. What are you laughing at? And he's looking at a kid this big. He's 17. Or what about like this tall? He goes, he's 8. Yeah. And David and I, 12. You give them the dose and you mark their hands so they don't come back through the line, the little sneaky buggers, to get another drink because it's sweet. Some of them actually like it. I didn't try it, did you? No. With each dose, though, we gave them a little gift. So we gave them crayons or Matchbox or a little twirly thing, which was really cool. I played with a kid for like an hour with a little twirly thing. You know what I'm talking about? It's like a straw with a propeller on the top of it. And somehow, where they're supposed to go up like that, this kid figured out in a matter of minutes how to make it go straight. And so he took the thing and he just shooted it at me. And then he smiled and beckoned me out to the street. And so we played for the longest time, but you know we had to stop when it fell in the water. Because once it got in the water, he went. Even he knows that you don't touch anything because of all the waterborne, all the nasty. Which makes sense with the goats and the chickens and everybody running around the same place. My point being about that, we gave them just these little trinkets. And you thought we'd given them $1 million. They light up with a matchbox. We have so much. There's no reason why we couldn't give some of it away. And I'd like to do it down there just because I've seen it. Now, there's lots of places you could go do this. But we have a core group here who already has a passion for this mission. So one more thing for you to pray about. One more thing for you to think about. Yeah. I knew that was going to happen. Imagine what would have happened if I'd gone through the whole vision really. This should be a year of conversations for us. We have a lot of things to think about. We have a lot of things to pray about. God has blessed this congregation in so many ways. We're going to meet today after we get things going. If we get out of here and get downstairs, and everything's going to be late, sorry, for a roundtable discussion. If you're interested in that, it's at 11 o'clock. We're just going to share ideas and thoughts. It's going to take however long it's going to take, and then we're going to pray and go. But your ideas and your input and your encouragement is huge and necessary and important. No 1, 2, or 3 people are going to do these God-sized things. But boy, if we got our hearts together and if we had our minds resolved and we felt the Spirit was leading us and Jesus was calling to some of this stuff, I'm telling you, there's no stopping. There's no end to what can be done for the kingdom. So that's the vision for now. I appreciate your patience. I love being your pastor. I look forward to God's continued work in our fellowship. Let's sing a song, because it's just too good of a song not to sing. "562. Stand as we sing. 562.